Record. There we go. All right. Right, so you're at this page. You need to make sure you select Forma Site Design. It's the same page you went to if you got AutoCAD or Revit, right? You went here, you went to select, and it like gave you some sort of download file or whatever. Here you just say select, and it should take you then to the Forma login page. Okay. Let's see, Autodesk Forma. Right. And when you're here, you can say access your Forma Site Design Hub, or simply make sure you're logged in. Go to that email invite that I sent you and double click on that link, or click on that link, so you can get into our project. Once you do it through here, access your Forma Site Design Hub. It might have you log in again. If so, just double click and say on the option to stay logged in. It'll keep you logged in for a good month on your browser, so you don't have to keep two-factor authenticate yourself back in every 5 minutes. It's kind of annoying that way. And this is kind of the starting page, the home page. You can see I have a bunch of stuff on here, but this is what we're looking at: the 240 Ren route, Mount Charleston, Nevada. The project is called Site at 367 Project 3 Mountain Villa. Yeah. There it is. Oh, yeah. Okay. Now, for the purposes of the recording, I know some of you are still at your desk trying to sort of weave through this. But let me just show you some of the things that we're going to be doing. So, of course, I see some of you have joined us. Very good. Excellent. You can see that we have terrain. It's a mesh. On the green and red, it'll be like a turquoise solid. It'll have the roads, we'll extrude those through and project them out onto the terrain for us. It has all the massings at certain levels. But just to give you maybe just a quick precursor of what's to come, once we start to, do the solar analysis, the environmental analysis. So here's a wind analysis. What it's going to do really quickly is give you something that looks pretty obvious, like, oh, look, there's wind, and then there's a place where there's a shelter from wind. But if we do the sort of detailed analysis that takes 30 to 90 minutes, I've already done it back here, then it'll give you more granular data. So first of all, it'll give you wind grows based off of the weather data for that location on Charleston weather station. So you start to see the primary directions of wind, the velocity of wind, and start to understand things that way. So for instance, when the wind's coming from the southwest, we can start to see what that might look like. When it's coming from the north, we can see what that might look like. We can also turn on the streamlines and start to see actual sort of data on how wind sort of moves through things, where we have eddies, low pressure, wind breaks, and not. So here's when it's coming from looks like the north, right? So up is north, and you can see that it sort of really pounds the north face of our building. And when it comes from the southwest, you can see it's gentler, mainly due to the terrain around us, right? Cathedral Rock is right there. So anyway, and we can do a series of these, right? So we can start to understand daylight as well. We can start to do daylight for specific times of the year. This one is, once it shows it, June 21st, so that we can begin to see where we have shade and where we don't have shade, right? I think what we start to see from these is that the north face is mostly shaded. The south face in the winter is partially shaded, in the summer is partially shaded. But then when we go to, let's say, to the winter, let's try one of these, see what the winter looks like. Oh, that's June again. God damn it. I mean, crud. Phooey. I can compare. Let's compare these things. There we go. That way I don't have to keep doing these. June 21st. Oh, that's December 21st. And December 21st, when that sun is lower, then of course this little inset is not providing much shade on the south side, right? So we're being pounded with the sun. So we can begin to understand, just how how well our shading devices are working or not working, and again, start to craft deliberate and useful strategies then for mitigating things like glare, heat gain, etc., right? It's not that we want to block all the light from the south, it's that we want to screen the heat away from the light. So we need to bounce that direct light at least once before it gets in our building, so that we can start to minimize the heat gain inside, right? So anyway, you can start to see that there's a clear logic here. An unabated north view, a south view that will need some shading. We'll use our shading components from the grid shell. We'll refactor those to be the same module as our curtain wall on the south side, and then begin to sort of, again, understand how all these platforms can sort of feed into that building information model in Revit. All right, you guys ready? You're like, yes. All right. Boom, boom. Oh, man. So I have Revit. Maybe I have Revit up. Let's get Revit up. But one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to try to get Revit to load, open. Yeah. And we're going to take that site master, and we're going to go ahead and export it really quickly into Revit. There's some things I'm going to do in Revit. There's some things I'm going to do in Forma in order to accomplish this. And the first time you do this, you might it might open up your browser after you sort of try to bring something into Revit, and make sure that you're cool with it being linked back to your Forma site. So just keep that in mind. The steps might differ depending on if you're logged in or not logged in, which browser you're using, etc. But anyway, in Revit, first of all, I'll just hit new, right? You can see I have a bunch of files here, but I'm just going to say new. And really importantly, a box is going to pop up. I went back and forth on this. I'm just going to say, go ahead and load that Imperial multidiscipline or Imperial architecture template. It has some goofy scope boxes. We'll go ahead and get rid of those and manipulate this file. But nicely, it does have levels already built in. It already has certain families, just sort of typical families loaded in. So we'll go ahead and use that. Imperial multidiscipline or Imperial architecture, if that's your option. Project, not project template, project. We're going to start a new project. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. So while that's going on in Revit, Revit's going to open up a new file. I'm going to go back and I'm going to make sure that I have the site master selected. Go ahead and refresh this. There should be a lot of people in here. Yeah, probably more. But you see the little dot, dot, dot next to the site master? If I click on that, and then I go through the little menu here, here's a way to export to Revit. I can send a Revit add-in. Of course, there's also ways to do this with, there's a plugin you can do, and you can load it to Rhino or SketchUp, depending on what your sort of, pick your poison. But we're going to do Revit. So we say send to Revit add-in beta. Right? So that's sort of how we're going to go back and forth here. Meanwhile, right, Revit's finally loaded. You can see that it's, let's talk just a little bit about the Revit interface for those of you who haven't seen it before. But I have a viewer here with tabs. Right now, by default, I think I just have the sort of level 1 architecture plans. Just a little bit of patience, just watch, don't make noise. Then we have a properties and a project browser, and then we have a bunch of tools and tabs on the top, so anyway, we'll be making use of all of these, but what you can see is that oftentimes we're looking at these things through the plans, through the sections, or through axons that we create. And so simultaneously as we model, it's populating those drawings and making drawings for us. Simultaneously, we can use those drawings to continue to develop the model through them. Okay? So right now we're looking at level 1. And what I'm going to do really quickly, just to start off with, is I'm going to go to floor plan, site plan. I'm just going to drill that out so I can go to just the site plan. You can see, again, it's just a blank template. It has like a looks like there's probably some sort of sheets, and then there's a scope box and a section box and some other markers for elevations and a section, things like that, okay? Not gonna worry too much about that right now. What I wanna do is just sort of set it up so I can see this in the big site drawing. And you can see that every time I click a drawing in this project browser, it pops up as another tab here. So I can start to go back and forth. Here's the architectural level 1 floor plan. Of course, I don't have anything in my model right now, so it's blank. Here's my site plan. I have a level 2 architectural plan. I have sections, elevations. Those things will continually update as I start to model things, right? Okay. Last but not least, I want to make a quick axon 3-dimensional view. Okay? I want to be able to sort of see everything kind of like that perspective view in Rhino. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go along the top to the View tab and go to 3D View, and I'm just going to select Default 3D View. That's going to give me a nice, quick axonometric, by default, an axon. I think it's probably hidden line or something like that. Right? And again, as I start to add some of these things, they do pop up down here. So I have, let's see, I have more things here than I really need. I don't need coordination and electrical for what we're doing in school, but let's see, maybe I do need coordination. 3D views, here's my 3D view. There we go. You can see just what we were looking at before, right? I have level 1, level 2, right? Those correspond to floor plans that will constantly be populated as I start to model things. I have a box, I have several boxes here. Again, we'll play around with that. But now that I have that site plan up and that 3D view, now I'm gonna go ahead and try to open this up and import this and send it over to Revit from Forma, okay? So I'm in Forma in my browser, site master, that's really important. Site master file, I'm gonna go Revit, send to Revit add-in, and it's going, okay, proposal's been sent to Revit, for me anyway. And that's how you can take things from Forma into Revit. In Revit, let's see here. If I go to Massing and Site tab, you'll see I have an option over here that says Load Proposal. Do you guys have that?
I'm not able, like when I press the 3 dots, it just says Show Proposal History.
It says what?
Just Show Proposal History, it doesn't have all the other options with it.
Over here?
Yes.
Yeah, you might need a login. And then, if you don't have this, you need to log in. And then over in Revit, if you don't have this, then what you might need to do is go to the extensions, right? So I'm over here on the left. Here's my proposals. And here's my extensions. And you might just say Add Extension. And again, this is why I take so much time this first day, because there's like a lot just to sort of get up and going. Once you get these things linked, it should work out well. So here's Autodesk Forma add-in for Revit. And you need to download this. It gives you a little exe file. And then you can run it, and then it adds that little import tool in your site and massing in Revit. It's the same thing for Rhino. It's the same thing for Dynamo. It's the same thing for Finch, if you use a little AI, Gen AI, to generate some floor plans. The same thing for TestFit. I thought maybe there was also something here for SketchUp. I don't see it though, but for sure, Rhino and Revit, there they are. Okay. All right. So again, we'll go through this a couple of times, but if you, really quickly, just to differentiate, if you're not seeing all of this, you need to maybe re-log in, refresh your browser, right? And make sure that you have access to send the Revit add-in data. Now, if you don't have this stuff over in Revit, in the massing and site, where you have a little Forma section with load proposal, and you can update and manage and go back and forth, right? Then in Forma, you need to get the plugin in order to do that, right? It's over here on the left, extensions. It's a little icon with like 3 boxes that are sort of stacked, and add extension. And then it'll give you a series of extensions that you have at your disposal here at your leisure. You can start to look through these. But right here, Autodesk Forma add-in for Revit beta, right? So you download that, you double click on it, it's a little exe file, I believe, and then it extends Revit, adds that little plugin and puts it in Revit. Okay? Once more, I know it's repetitive, but everybody's going at their different pace, right? What I want to do is be able to go to Forma and click on those three dots and send to Revit, right? With the Site Master. And then in Revit, I want to be able to go to Masking and Site tab and see this Forma stuff and be able to load the proposal, okay? If you don't see this, again in Forma, in my web browser, you need to go over to the left, do the extensions, add extension, download that Autodesk Forma. You'll need a it'll give you like an executable. You need to install that. Maybe even reopen Revit if you have to, right? But then you should have everything in place. Yeah, there's a question.
When I open the extension tab, it doesn't have like a add extension spot to click on. Like you have that blue little.
Like right here,
Yeah.
and you don't have that blue box to hit?
No.
All right, then refresh your browser. Now, are you seeing these proposals?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you should be able to add extension. Is anybody else having a similar problem? Sorry, yes or no? You are? Just two people or like everybody is? 3, 4, 5, all right. Okay, so just as a quick reminder, and let's see here, I've added everybody as editor, but in order to actually gain all of that access, again, at the very beginning, let's see here, where is it? Here we go. Again, did you go here and say select Forma site design so that you, oh, wait, where'd it go? Ah. So if I go to education, right, and I look for the products, right, again, you need to tell it, like I'm going to select Forma, I want student access to Forma site design. If you haven't done that, nothing else works, okay? So you gotta do that first. Has everybody done that and they're still having this issue?
I haven't done it yet, I'm still having
Okay.
verification.
Let's say, make sure you log in. Okay. If you're logged in with your .edu address, then you have student access. You can basically download this and license it for 12 free months. Every 12 months, it'll tell you the time's up. If you still have that EDU address, you can do it for another 12 months. They want students to use this stuff. Here. Forma site design. So if you don't do that, then you're not going to be able to do anything inside of Forma. It's really weird how they did that. Any luck? How we doing? We getting it linked up? All right, so for those who are ready to move forward, don't worry if you're not, but for those who are ready to move forward again, back here in the project, I look at the site master. I don't want proposal 1 Josh. Proposal 1 Josh is mine. That was me bringing something back into Revit, back into Forma to start. And you can make your own little proposals and name it with your name. In fact, you will. But the site master, that's where I want everybody to sort of start off with, right? That has all the information you need to start modeling on the site in Revit. Okay, so for those of you who are ready to move on, site ... send to Revit, add in, and then of course here, everybody just watch for just a second. This is where we're going. I can load the proposal in Revit. Revit again might pop up and make sure that I'm logged in, right, with the web browser. But it's going to say, do you want to load this? Are you sure? I'm going to hit load. And it might take a minute or so, but it's going to load all that geometry in, place it in, and it'll look kind of weird, probably because we have a bunch of scope boxes and things that, so you're not even able to see it at first. But you can see that it's basically turning all this stuff and formatting it for Revit now. So the big topo mesh from USGS becomes a topo solid, which we can actually do stuff with in Revit, etc. And it's saying, oh, well, you know, this stuff came from OpenCity or blah, 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 blah. I'm just going to say, yeah, great, I don't care. All right, there it is. That's my 3D view. Really handy. Like, I mean, again, like, I don't know if any of you have ever done anything with topo, but like, it's a pain in the ass if you like are just going off of a flat USGS map, right? I mean, I've helped people automate that with Grasshopper, moving things up in steps, but it's still pain, royal pain. This just works. It's really nice. And in fact, it also knows the weather data because it knows the exact location. It's tied into everything that you would expect, right? So again, it's nice to sort of see these things have matured the way they have. All right, so how are we doing? For those that are having issues, you're getting logged in, you're getting access to Forma, you're then accepting my invite, and then over here you can probably load a new extension so that you can go back and forth between Forma and Revit. It's hard to do with 30 plus people, but we'll get there. Okay. If you're still having issues by the end of class, just stick around for the end and we can help you one-on-one. Okay. All right. And I am recording this, and I will post it so that you can refer back if you need to. All right, you guys ready? Woo. How are we doing? All right, woo-woo. All right. Revit. Oh, here it is. Okay. So, a couple of things you might notice, right? If I go to level 1 floor plan, all I see is like a gray fill, right? In other words, level 1 is occupying some place in this section that's cutting through mountain, and it's being formatted in a very particular place, and our site's probably both higher and way off in the space from where this scope box has us set, okay? And so here's why, another reason I wanted you to sort of look at this 3D view, and the site and everything else. Right, you can see that we have a series of what we call scope boxes, right? In other words, we can sort of limit the amount of model that we actually see at any given time. We can make sort of extents box and say, you know, temporarily at least, you know, crop everything else away, let's just focus in on this area. That's called a scope box. And on the site plan, right, you can see that we have this, I'm not quite sure where our site is even on this because we're seeing just some sort of arbitrarily cropped version of our site, right? So a couple of things, right? We talked a little bit of the project browser, and every time you start to make a new drawing, or you try to find a drawing that you have, you can find it here and start to double click on it, and you start to have these tabs pop up. But you didn't talk about these properties. I think this is really important, right? This is like the part of Revit that's like Grasshopper, right? Anything you do, a drawing, a wall, a floor, a topo mass, right? It has parameters. And you can start to look at the settings of parameters, some of them as variables, and start to adjust them. Okay. All right. In this case, I have nothing selected, and so I'm in my site plan. It's showing me the properties for my floor site plan. And so I can go scroll down, in my case, since I have both of these docked in the same place, and I can see, look, oh, extents, crop view, crop region visible. I'm going to start unchecking these. And then the other thing I might do is look at the scope box and make sure it's set to none and hit apply, right? And so now that I stop cropping the view and cropping the region, I can see the whole darn thing at once, which is kind of handy, right? Look what it did. It brought in that red outline showing the extents of our site. But look, also interestingly, it's actually cropping our site. So you can see that, again, we're not getting the whole terrain, but actually the site plan is being cut, and then we're just seeing this as sort of infill, right? Sort of mountain, cut in section or plan, like poche. All right, so we have some issues to sort of work out here, right? Yeah. And at the same time, right, if we go to our level 1 view, we're in big trouble. we have some scope boxes we need to override, probably just get rid of. And then it looks like we're also sort of looking through a mountain right now instead of looking from above at a mountain. And so let's just look at this, right? I'm going to my level 1 plan, right? As I open these things up, they remain as tabs up here, so I can start to toggle back and forth between these things. Level 1, I'm going to go ahead and scroll down, let's see, extents, and I'm going to go ahead and uncheck what I can. It says I have a scope box called Views Overall. And when I click in there, I can pull this down and just say, I don't want any scope box, none, please. And uncheck that now, and hit apply. Ah, okay. And then maybe I can go to edit view range, right? And I can look and see. First of all, it's telling me that it's looking at 4 feet above level 1. That's the cut plane, right? So that's intriguing, right? What we need to do is we need to go into our section and start to understand where our levels are set, right? Right now we have a level 1 and a level 2 set in sections, elevation markers. We need to move those to where we actually need them. But broadly, what we're doing is we're bringing this stuff in. We use the default template. It had some weird scope boxes, and so we're just sort of unwinding some of those things. So we can see everything all at once, and then make our own scope boxes afterwards, okay? So, if I want to look at that information, where our levels are, I can drill down into sections. We have a working section right here. And if I look at this, we got all of this. You see our stupid scope boxes that we started off with. You can see there's some masses here, wherever we're cutting that section. But if you zoom in, look, there's level 1 and level 2. Now, those are in the ground. Those are not very useful for us. And so what we're going to do is we're going to start to move these things up. And again, recalibrate all of our drafting tools so that we have them in the places where we want inside a scope box that actually contains our site, a little bit of context to it. Okay? For those of you who've used how many of you have used Revit before? 3, 4 of you? Okay. Ooh, all right. We'll get there. We can always take it slower if we need to. All right. So you can see right here, first of all, we have 3 different levels, 3 different elevation markers. We have the terrain minimum level. I'm just going to leave that. I'm not going to screw around with that, right? I don't want to, what you'll see is that the terrain, the topo solid that we made, is linked to that level. So if we move that level around, the site will move around, trip around with it. We don't want to do that. Okay? But we do want to think in terms of the architecture, level 1 and a level 2, okay? And if I go ahead and hold down the control key to select both of these, right, it might be locked. Let me see if I can move them. Okay, no, I can move them. It's saying highlighted datum cannot be associated with specified scope box. And I say, great, disassociate with that scope box. These scope boxes are a scourge that they come in this thing. So I'm going to say, again, I'm going to unselect things. I'm in my section, so I can see my section properties. I can unselect cropped region. If there's a scope box, I'm going to make sure that it's set to none. I think I just unapplied that, so that's good. I can click and drag and select these things, and I can move them around in elevation, okay? Now, where's this section being cut through? How do we see where the section's being cut? Yeah, any plan, site plan, typically, yeah. And let's try to find this section cut, wherever it is. Let's see, there's level 1. We'll go to level 1 plan. See this little red line here? That's the section cut, right? Okay. So, I could try to like mess around with that, but wouldn't you rather just cut your own sections? Let's cut our own sections. I mean, we have like a section cutting tool here. Like we can cut, I mean, this is great. Like back when I started school, when I was in your size shoes, I'd have to like get the topo and tape it down and then put some trace down and then project things down and then, like cutting a section took like 3 hours just to get the base drawing done, right? Now we can do like 30 of them in a minute, right? So it's really nice. You guys don't know how good you have it. I sound really old now, don't I? Anyway, all right, so let's go back to that site. We can go back to level 1 either way. But let's take a look at this. What I want to do is maybe cut a section north-south through my site, right? I mean, that, you look at this, that's the primarily way I'm gonna start designing this thing, right? Like, I have a south end that faces the road, I have a north end that is on a slope and looks out into this huge, beautiful, gorgeous vista, mountain vista, right? That's how I'm gonna really, like, that's where I'm gonna cut a section. Anyway, so let's go ahead and do that. Again, anytime I wanna make a new view, just like when I made a 3D view, I went to the View tab. Right? I can do the same thing for a section. I can go to the View tab and click Section. Right? Now I'm just gonna make this thing ridiculously long. I'm just gonna click here, and then click over here. There we go. Now we have a section that's looking this direction. If I wanna change that, I can just click that and switch it the other direction if I want, but there we are. Yeah, not too bad. All right. Now, when I made that section, if I go down here, look at the building sections, it made a new section for me called Section 2, right? Because I already had Section 1. So again, as I make a section in plan, the section shows up in the browser. I can open up that section, and then I can start to adjust the levels for the plans, right? So again, you can start to see these relationships, I think, that you would normally do back at your drafting board. And so look at that. Now I can see where my site is in section, and now I can drag these things around until I have them just where I want them. Oh yeah, look at that. Right, there's level 1, that's grade. Right on my site, right by that road, maybe, yeah. Here's that other section where that's cut, out in the middle of nowhere. Maybe I'll move that just for fun. Click and drag. So you're seeing I have section cuts, I have plans, plan levels, right? I go back and forth. There's a relationship between section and plan, right? In the section, I can develop the elevation markers for each plan. And in plan, I can add the section cuts, right? To then begin to cut more sections. L1, level 1 plan, look at that. Now, what's interesting about this is that once I get this set, right? Now you see that I've moved level 1 up, right? It moves where that section is being cut. A plan is basically just a section cut horizontally, right? Looking down. Yeah. You knew that, right? That seems fairly intuitive, right? Right. So now you can see that 4 feet above our site grade, now I'm starting to cut. Now I'm way off on, not in our site. Now, it's not lost on me that there's a lot of information here, and sometimes I want to see all of it, but from time to time, maybe I want to just be able to sort of really drill in and just focus in on my site, maybe the immediate adjacent stuff. Right? So I'm going to make my own scope box now. Okay? So now I want to sort of be able to crop this and really just sort of zoom in on my building, my site. All right. And so if I go again to View tab, and I'm in Plan, there's an option up here called Scope Box. I can make my own scope box now, right? So the arbitrary ones that were made in the template for me, we got rid of those. We wanted to get rid of those. Now I can make my own, and then you'll see that as an option when you want to add a scope box. Okay. So watch what I do, and then I'll go back and we'll recap and make sure that we're on the same page when it comes to, again, just sort of being able to zoom out and see our entire site. Go into section, move our levels up and down. Go into plan, cut a section and manipulate our section cuts, right? And then, again, between plan, section, and axon, be able to sort of add our own scope box and start to format this for our own needs, okay? So go to scope box, and not a big surprise, I can draw a box. Haha, look at that. And not only that, but I can select it, and I'll select it. And when I go to, let's say, section, you'll see that the scope box is still selected, but in section mode. And so now I can start to expand it in elevation, just make sure that I have everything I need here, right? Oh yeah, look at that. And then in 3D view, you can see that here it is. There's the section, the scope box I made. Now that I have the scope box, and by the way, just named it Scope Box 1. I've never seen such a dumb generic name. Let's see. So what I can do, now that I have it selected, I can change its properties, right? I can go to properties and change its name. And I can say site, scope, zoomed in, or I don't know, I'm just gonna say something that so I recognize it, and hit apply. All right, great. So now I've unselected everything. Again, in my properties, I see, the drawing that I'm looking at, its properties, right? So I can drill back down where I said, don't crop the view and don't use a scope box. Now I can go back to scope box and I can say, let's use site scope zoom, that new one I created, and hit apply, right? And now I only see the stuff inside. Right? I can toggle it on or off, right? I can start to understand floor plan and section. And I love being able to turn that off and see the whole region. But when I'm just, trying to model like some freaking steel connections, I want to be able to zoom in and not see, everything all at once. Right? So this becomes really handy. All right. Okay. So let me just undo. Or actually, let me just do this. Cancel, close. No. Right. Let's recap. New file in Revit. I'm going to go ahead with the Imperial Multidiscipline, for better or worse. I thought about maybe not doing that, and then I don't have all these scope boxes to disable. But then I had to load in a bunch of things, like all the families for even simple things like doors. It became a pain. So we're going to use this. We're going to undo some of it, right? So start a new file, save it, label it as such, like Project 3. This is my awesome Revit file. In Forma, this is our site. This is all the area and context around our site, and this red area is our site. I'm going to go ahead and Revit, send to Revit in Forma. And then over here, Revit will be ready to receive it. I go to massing and site. Sometimes I forget, where do I find the Forma? It's in massing and site for whatever reason. So go to load proposal up top where it says Forma, and then load proposal. Load the proposal. And it's going to be like, well, you sent me site master. Are you sure? Yeah. Okay. Take a minute to load everything up. So take all that mesh, it's going to build it into a solid. It's going to project some things around the roads. It's going to add levels and things like that, etc. Here we go. Right? And again, right? Just again, as I mentioned, right? Now we're sort of dealing with the craziness of having this arbitrary level set in places, arbitrary scope boxes, right? And so I'm just going to go through some of the more useful drawings that are already generated for me that I'm going to use. Level 1, floor plan, maybe whatever the section is. We'll look at the section. And a 3D view, right? Also maybe the site plan. The site plan can be useful at times, right? And we're just going to go ahead and start undoing these scope boxes. So for each one, I can just drill down. This is the site plan properties. I can go down. Finally, I find extents, uncrop, make sure that no scope box is set, hit apply. Now I'm starting to see everything all at once. Okay. Again, the site plan's cutting right here through the mountain. Arbitrarily, I think that's due to wherever the level 1 and level 2 were set, right? So we'll fix that in a minute. But again, level 3, we don't have a scope box. Level 1, we definitely do. I'll just go ahead and undo those. Here it says views overall. There's also grids and levels. I'm just going to hit none and hit apply and uncrop. And now we see everything all at once again. Right? I can go to the section, and I understand that what I'm seeing in plan is a direct result of here's where level 1 is, right? And also hold control down and also select level 2, and then I can drag these wherever I need to. It's going to give me, again, this error hey, this is outside the scope box that you had. And I'm like, yeah, exactly. I don't like that scope box. So I'm just going to say, yeah, disassociate. I don't care. In fact, what I can do is maybe just start to delete these things anyway. Come on, I don't need those. Get out of here. There we go. And I can start to move these things around. Now, again, we came into this, right? This is just the default section they have. I'm not even sure where it's being cut, which direction it's looking at. I want to be very specific about this section I want. I'm going to go to the site map, right? Site plan. When I hover over, I can see, oh, there's my site, right? There's the road that feeds my site. Here's a neighbor. Here's a neighbor. There's a road just below, right? All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to View pull down, or the View tab. Right? Whenever I want to make a new drawing, a new view, View tab. And now I'm going to make a new section here. I'm just going to draw that section. I want to make sure that it's going right through my site, north, south. That's exactly what the view I want anyway. Okay. And you can see when I draw that section, it's also showing me what direction it's looking at, and also how far that it's going to clip in the sort of far clipping, right? So again, when I made that section, it made a new building section category over here, and in section 2, and I can go look at it. Oh yes, look at that. There we go. Now I can start to move these things around exactly where I want them, right? My building is going to be starting right here, and it's going to remain level, even though the ground sort of, again, slopes way down. We have a lot of topo on our site, right? Okay. So I'm going to establish grade. I can always change level 2 later, but yeah, look at that. Isn't that great? Okay. You can see all the levels I have here in section correspond to floor plans that it's going to generate for me, right? So where we have a level, right, that's where the ground or floor is, finished floor, let's say. And then 4 feet above that, that's where the level 2 plan is being cut, right? Typical convention. All right. Let's see. What else? Is any of this making sense? It's a lot, right? All right. Now, let's say I want to make my own scope box, right? I have to do that in plan, I think. I go to the View tab still, right? Because this influences the views. And I'm going to say Scope Box, and then it'll allow me to draw my own scope box here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, something like that maybe. Instead of Scope Box 3, I'm going to call it something awesome, like Josh's Scope Box. And hit Apply. I'm pretty fast and loose with the word awesome, of course. Section 2, I can go back to this section. You can still see my scope box, right? I still have it selected. It's highlighted blue. But now in section, I can also begin to extend it in Z, right? Extend it in elevation, both upwards and downwards. How are you guys feeling about this? We get this initial setup going, and then what you'll find is that we'll start to draw some grids, and you'll see the dimensions. You can start changing the dimensions. It's parametric. And then we'll start to add walls, and you see that the walls automatically trim themselves out and stuff, and also where they start and where they stop, right? Those are all parametric and linked up with our levels. And so what we do is we start to think about how to frame our project. First of all, what parts of the site do we need to really look at carefully, right? Which parts of the site are we working on? What's our scope? Right? We define it with a scope box. Then we can start to establish a grid ordering system. Then we know exactly where we place columns. We can start to build a frame. Then we can start to, we have the skeleton. We can start to hang skin, walls, envelope on. We can start to infill with floor plates, etc. So we're building it virtually, almost like how you would build it physically. Right? This is the initial setup. Right? And what's interesting here is that you'll start to see that there's a relationship between level 1 and level 2. So if I just move level 1, level 2 will move up with it. It'll always be 12 feet above because we have this set right here and it's pinned, it's locked, right? So if I unlock it and unpin it, and then I want to make that, let's say, 15 feet, I can do that, right? If I want to change what level 2 looks like and say, maybe I want to name it level 2, I can do that, right? And then suddenly things will start to change throughout. Actually, it didn't do that for me for whatever reason, but all right. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll be going back and forth between sort of, it's almost like having the grid paper underneath as a base underlay for your trace, right? Here we can always go back to it. And if we build off of it, we can always go back and change the underlay, and everything will move with it. Right? So the structural engineer comes back and she says, well, I know you say 30 feet spacing center to center between your steel columns, but it's really more like 28 feet and 6 inches. You go, no problem. You go back to your grid and just change it. And then everything updates, right? So that's what we'll do. We'll start to build this, and that's why I like building it just like you would build it physically, because as you start to go, everything begins to associate in nice, clean ways. So if, for instance, the envelope is hung off the steel frame, because you did steel frame first, the floors are derivative levels, right, then everything just sort of works. You don't break things as you start to manipulate. You start to learn more information. You start to enter things in, dial things in properly. The model updates with it, right? Again, this idea of thinking parametrically, right? Just like with Grasshopper, different platform, right? Geared specifically towards buildings. Okay, one last thing maybe before I can sort of float around and help with any specifics and then collect grid shells. And that is, if I go to, I'm just gonna go to my site plan for right now. My site plan hasn't been cropped. I'm gonna go ahead to my site plan, make sure I don't have anything selected. I'll just sort of click out here in white space. Site plan is in the properties, and I'm just gonna say, let's go ahead and let's scope box this bad boy with Josh's scope box. Okay, there we go. That section cut looks ridiculously long now. I'm gonna go ahead and just sort of shorten that up so I can see it in any given moment here. Oh. Damn it, come on, I just want, yeah, there we go, okay. Okay, I guess I just have to zoom in and very specifically click on this stupid dot. Okay, whatever. Okay, anywho. Right, so now that I have this, the next step is I can start to think about a grid, okay? When I'm in plan view, I go to site, plan in this case. If I go to the architecture tab, and I look over here, I have two things. I have grid, and I have levels. Between grid and levels, I can actually construct a three-dimensional matrix of grid that becomes a sort of ordering system for how I modulate space, structure, and materials. So if you think about the grid, it's basically in plan XY, right? You're thinking about column grid potentially, where walls align, edges of floor slabs, etc. And when you look at it in section view, you see the levels. That's the sort of third dimension of grid. So if I do this, I can hit grid, and I can start to add some grid lines. And I'm going to do them in north-south orientation. And I'm going to make this, let's say, 32, you can see the dimension there, right? As I was going, 32 feet over, so I have a 32-foot spacing between these two columns, right? And then I can go in the other direction, I can do something similar. So I can say, if I want this thing to really face due north, relative, regardless of what the street's doing, I'm gonna go ahead and do this. And let's say I'm gonna do 28 feet in this direction. I'm actually going to put a couple here. Maybe I'll even add another one. I'm not sure how far I'm going to go here. Right. Now in a drawing set, typically you'll number one direction and letter the other direction. It's like playing Battleship with the contractor then. So they say he or she, I shouldn't say he, but they will say, like, let's look at this column, it's B1 here, that column, right? So that becomes a really easy way to sort of organize the drawing and be able to talk to anybody about it, even over the phone. Okay. All right. So that's where we're going to go next on Wednesday. We'll start to draw the grid. We'll make these floors. We'll start moving quickly so we can go back and forth between floors, making more levels, thinking about. But what we'll do is we'll start to build columns and beams. If you want to work ahead, because you're just like that, once I have this grid, I can go to structure and go to column, and I can actually go through my W shapes. You guys in structures right now? You guys been sizing like steel beams and and columns? Yeah. So what does a W10 by 33 mean? What are the numbers? What does the 10 mean in W10 by 33? The structural depth, right? The depth of that web, right? And what does the 33 mean? Weight per linear foot, so 33 pounds, right? So you can get up to some big honking guys, like 14 inches deep beams. That's not too bad, right? Like think about these beams. They're probably about 12, 14 inches. 109 or 119 pounds per linear foot. Thing's huge, right? Like steel's heavy. All right, so we'd probably go with something lighter, like a W10 by 33 for our columns, and I can start to place them. I can start to snap them, in fact, at these intersections on the grid. And what's great is when you snap them at the intersections of the grid, then when you move the grid around, let's say you change the spacing, all the structure updates with it, right? Then we can start to add beams. So we'll start that process on Wednesday. We'll basically build the frame. It won't be too bad. We'll also start to utilize some special copy and paste tools that we can start to paste things at multiple levels. And we'll look at the section in those levels, start to establish top of steel, a second floor, a third floor on the roof, et cetera, right? So we'll just start to make the big grid that we can then start to make decisions within, right? So it's sort of a matrix of that then helps us align edges and centers up to, okay? All righty? I can't wait. It's gonna be so great. All right, just come to class. We'll move through. How many of you are still having some issues just trying to connect up Forma with Revit? You guys got that through? I'll do a rehash of what we did today really quickly, right? I've recorded this, so if you need to go back and just quickly go, what do you do for a scope box or how did, like I'm here and I'm stuck, you can always go back to the recording, but again, I'll try to sort of, again, refresh your memory at the beginning of each session of the highlights of what we did the time before, realizing that I just want you here in class, engaged, we'll get through this together, okay? All right. Maybe I'll save this, why not? I'll save it this time. Josh. And I'll put it in desktop maybe. There we go. All right. For those of you with grid shells, stay put for just a minute, and I just want we'll go around and set them and label them. For those who submitted them last week, please be a little more patient with me. I haven't had a chance to actually move things around and actually photograph them nicely. So I'd like to hold on to them for a little longer, okay, before I hand them back. But I will hand them back to you. All right, I promise. And if you see anybody touching them out there, just slap them. Just like throw something at them, fashion some sort of throwing star and just take their eyes out or something, right? Like nobody should be touching other people's models, right? They can look, don't touch, right? Look, but don't touch. All right, so we want to keep them as pristine as possible, and I want to get them back to you, okay? But I do want to photograph them first, or at least some of them. Yeah, anyway. Thank you. All right.